Hi, it's Dave, the train guy from the Hobby Man by Hearns. Today we're going to do Australian outline stuff again. And it's very welcome because there's been a bit of a drought on Victorian or Australian outline rolling stock here for a little while. So today we are going to do the on-tracks Victorian Railways VLX Louvre Vans. Yeah, I'm quite excited about this, being a Victorian Railway modeler myself. And we've got three variations of it. We have, the first one would be the early version of it, which is the VLX. This will be welcomed by a lot of you VR modelers out there. Yep, here we go. This particular version of the VLX is as it would have ran probably from about the time they were built in 1962, and in the day these were considered a contemporary modern piece of rolling stock, hence because they were roller bearing for high speed interstate traffic. They were bogie exchangeable, hence the X, and also because they had checker plate floors, among other things, grade control, heavy duty braking for going over some of the steeply graded lines in New South Wales, and amongst other things, these spent a lot of time interstate. So if you're an interstate modeler, we know that not everyone models Victoria. If you're a New South Wales modeler or a South Australian modeler or a Western Australian modeler, you can probably get away with running these on your layout, as they did travel interstate a lot. And New South Wales was actually famous for not releasing these wagons back to Victoria and ended up in a lot of obscure locations. But anyway, as you can see from it, it's got this smallish VR logo that was in use from 1962 probably to the later half of the 60s. Really nice sheen level. And it's got a lot of good detail. And if you just flip it over to the back here, it's got the original handbrake. You've got shunting steps and irons, and a nice touch, and you might just pick that up in the camera. We've got mesh shunting steps for the shunter to sit on, and there's a wealth of detail on the underside. There you go. That's the early version. The second version of the VLX is as how they would have run into the 1970s. Again, very similar sort of features. The only difference really is just that the logo got a lot larger. So it's the large VR logo, and it's got the three-letter code. So V for Victoria, L for Louvre Van, X for Bogie Exchange, which means, if no one knows what that means, if it came to places like Peterborough in South Australia or Dynon in Melbourne, if it travelled on broad gauge or standard gauge, which is the width of the rails, the whole wagon could be lifted up with jacks, and a new set of gauge convertible bogies could be wheeled in, brake gear connected up, and off it would go interstate. So if it was travelling around Victoria, it could go to Sydney on the new standard gauge line in 1962. If the whole wagon was jacked up and it was bogie exchanged, then it could run on standard gauge. And so these wagons could have been seen anywhere from Melbourne to Brisbane, Melbourne to Perth, Melbourne to Alice Springs, Melbourne to Adelaide, around regional Victoria. So like I said, if you're an interstate modeler, it doesn't stop you from using these. And another really nice feature about these wagons is that the doors open. Yeah, there we go. So if you wanted to have a sort of a semi-cameo scene with the wagon being unloaded, and you wanted to have it in a goods yard or a private siding, you could have it filled up with beer barrels or pallets, whatever you like. So it's a nice touch. And one thing I didn't mention about the first one is that you get a set of additional doors. And what's he talking about, you say? Okay. As time went on, the Victorian Railways actually increased the size of the logo. They went from a small logo to a rather sort of a medium-sized logo. So they get around this by not producing another range of models, but by just producing another range of parts. Yeah. Okay. Now we have it, the VLX, now in its final form. And now it's gone to a 4-letter coating, and in 1999, 2000 thereabouts, the Victorian rail network got privatised, and it was then taken over by Freight Victoria, which became Freight Australia. And this is the particular version as it was in its final form. Now, these probably lingered on till about the mid-2000s, and then most of them ended up in storage around Tottenham or in regional centres where they're virtually, due to years of use and being out in the elements and rust and fatigue, they're all probably eventually cut up for scrap. But Freight Australia did aggressively pursue regional freight business, mainly transporting keg beer and baled wool. But as you can see, they still left the bottoms red, which would have been true to form as to how they were. Most of these were just dollied up. And another interesting feature is that with this and the previous one I showed you is that you have sometimes a variation in the doors. And in this one here you get a variation in where the logo was placed. And like I said, it's a 4-letter logo, grey bogies. Okay. Moving along, another one from On-Track's models is their VSX. Now the VSX is a 56 foot version of the VLX. So as you can see, it's a much larger sort of a model. Again, it has sliding doors, nice interior detail. If you look inside there, you can sort of see like the bracing or battens on the inside. Again, it's a really nice paint finish, although these would really be enhanced if you were to weather them. Maybe a little bit of rust or a wash. If you're doing maybe like the Freight Australian version that I just showed you before, graffiti wouldn't look out of place. And again, these weren't just simply a lot of parts carried through from the last model. I've actually gone to the effort of putting in the correct minor type hand wheel, and as you can just see, there's a lot of handrail detail, a mesh shunter step, even an air hose, and it's all nicely stenciled. So that's the VSX with its 3-letter coating. And finally, we have, again, in its final form, in the twilight years of its life, for this class of wagon, as it would have run with Freight Australia. So, and in this 3-car pack, they present it with a plain-sided door and with the original louver door. And again, they all open up. And I think these might have been used on dedicated bagged rice traffic from Echuca to Melbourne. I'm not completely sure on that fact, but I'm pretty sure that's what they were used for. So again, for the contemporary modeler, you've got something that looks rather interesting. Anyway, that's our new exciting release. If you want to know more, just go on to Hearns online or Hobbyman online and just type in On-Track models and it'll take you to the page. Any order over $100 is postage free in Australia. And if you like, you can even visit or see them in store for yourself. So in the meantime, happy modelling, and until next time, see ya.